start. Let's start. I think it's next is Wayne. Wayne, if you want to take your place there, yeah. Okay, should we start?
Hello. Yes. Good
Yes,
afternoon,
perfect.
everyone.
Just before that, so are we having our remote presenter next then? You might want to inform him saying that he's next, yeah? Since he's... Okay, fine. Please let him know, yeah? All right, Wayne, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. Excuse me, I do have an Australian accent, so I hope that's okay to understand. I also don't follow the cricket, so don't hold any of that against me either. Thank you very much. So my name is Wayne Van Eyck. I work with Oracle Utilities, which is a utility-specific business unit within Oracle. So we cover all types of utilities: electricity, gas, water, wastewater. We also do some toll road activities as well. And certainly to the previous question / comment, we do see a lot of parallels between what we're seeing in the energy sectors and the gas sector, within the water sector as well, and see some advantages there to have a look at. So certainly what we've heard a lot of today, and what we know, and certainly what we see around the world as well, is that there are key challenges which are specific to the water industry, which do have some parallels with other utilities as well, though. Now, number one, water scarcity as such. So the thing that's interesting about water is that all the water that we have now is all the water that we've ever had and all the water that we ever will have. It's just that we've got more people and more constraint on that resource as such. And what this does then is it gives us great pressure on operational efficiency. So we need to do more with less as such. And also what we see, and we see this in other industries and we see it in other utilities, is this rising customer expectations. And this is based on a number of fronts for us as well. So when we have a look at the water scarcity issue, we can see that this is really a double-edged sword, because we can see that the demand is growing, and also the resources that we have to deal with this are reducing for us. So we need to do much more with much less, and we see these sort of figures, and these are very large numbers, and these are numbers which we're all facing. And then we have a look within India and other nations where the loss of water throughout that process is a very big deal for us as well. So the pressure we see on operational efficiency is really massively affected by this ageing infrastructure as well, and the ageing workforce within the utility sectors. So we see that not only are we needing to do more with less, that the things that we're working with have degraded to a point that we simply can't rely on them anymore. And we're seeing that happen as we're starting to measure these things more, as we've seen with a lot of presentations. Technology is doing amazing work for us in helping us understand the problem, and that's also helping us understand where the infrastructure is failing us, and the leading towards how do we use that data and how do we manage that problem as such. And then there's the economic cost. So if we look at rising customer expectations, this is something which is general across the board, but specific with water, what we see is that the economic cost within these customers is a massive impact as well. So not only do they have rising expectations from a utility perspective, we see this being continual rising economic expectations as well. So when we think of water assets and the digitalisation of those water assets, how can we use them to solve specific concerns for water operational professionals? So the thing that's interesting, I find, and I see this in the energy sector as well, is the type of things that we're talking about are the type of things that utilities have always done. So utilities have this pressure of being able to maintain their existing business, the regulatory pressures, the operational pressures, but then they have this added pressure of requiring to innovate. They need to innovate to manage the way that they do business, and they need to innovate to continually manage the changing regulations and the changing market structures and the changing marketplace as well. So when we have a look at these types of things, there's a number of areas here. Again, some of these we've talked about today in detail around detecting and managing the leaky pipes, maintaining our asset health, managing the billing and rating and maintaining that from an economic perspective and a political perspective, managing our customer expectations, and then planning for this capital investment as well. Now, one of the things that we have seen in other sectors of the utility industry is that digital changes everything. And in a lot of ways, we've just talked about some of the challenges and some of the key issues, but of course, what we like to do and what our management likes us to do is think of these things as opportunities. And of course, they actually are opportunities as we start to see the technologies come in to help us understand what's happening and then what we can do about it. When we say digital changes everything, it absolutely does. And we can see that the business functions that utilities have always been doing can now be enriched across the organisation with this digitalisation of assets, of measurements, and of customers as well. Now, the trick here, though, is, of course, doing this is a real challenge. As we heard before, there's this huge influx of data, and a lot of utilities are quite overwhelmed with this influx of data, and what do we do with it? And interestingly enough, what we've seen in the other utility sectors is that they develop these business models for smart meters, for other components, and they're fairly narrow in scope. It's about reducing the cost to read the meters, or being able to improve the data quality so we can improve our revenue. And that's absolutely true. But when we talk about digital changes everything, this really comes to represent our business models around our expenditure and the way that this technology does help genuinely drive value throughout these different parts of the organisation as such. But then, of course, as with everything, this is not without challenge. So what we see with the asset operations side of things is that we see these new models around managing an asset, and we see these new data sources create these significant challenges. Now, specifically when it comes to utilities and asset management and the digitalisation of assets, all utilities are on some kind of journey. And generally speaking, at a high level, that journey is going from a reactive approach to a proactive approach. And there's many steps within that as we go along. Yep. So what we see is that we have all of these new inputs, we have these new technologies, we have the new ideas, and we have a great amount of visibility, usability, conditions, analysis, prediction of failure patterns, but we need to be able to build those into the business processes as such. So what have we learnt from other industries and other utility types around the world? Well, what we learn is that it's a multi problem. We've got multiple inputs and we've got multiple outputs. And what we really need to be able to focus on is the business processes within an organisation, like around the asset management stuff. We look at ISO 55000, and it's about improving the checking, improving the measuring, and making that baked in to our everyday life. So one of the things that we want to be able to do with all of this technology, all of the new data into our business processes, is quite simply we want to be able to make the right thing to do, the easy thing to do. We want this data to be of value to us, not be of challenge to us as such. So how do we do that? Well, so what we see is that receiving this data starts the journey for us. And again, utilities are already doing this, It's about how do we continue to do this, and then how do we continue to innovate over the top of that. So we bring in our data, and then that data becomes information where we start to analyse that data. And then from that information, it starts to become knowledge, where we can start to visualise trends. There's been a lot of examples of analysis, machine learning, those type of things. But then it really comes down to this wisdom concept, which is this journey of being able to predict and be proactive with our asset management. So the key takeaways here is when we're looking at the digitalisation of assets, we understand the technologies, the type of sensors that are available, the type of data that's available, but we really need to understand quick time to value. So we look at utilities, they're spending a lot of money, they're getting a lot of data, but where's the value? So this is something which needs to be understood from a business model perspective, and also how that feeds into all areas of the business. And this comes through to rapid and instant results. There's examples of deployment of these technologies and the infusion of the data and these technologies into the everyday life of the utility, and this needs to be understood as well. And it's all about this journey, particularly on the asset management side, of reactive to proactive. Where are we as a utility on this path, and how do we move to that place that we want to be with the digitalisation of assets? Thank you very much.